Jack, is that blood?
Blood of tomatoes. Be very careful with this. Paragon's glide-sustaining ions have been neutralized by the cassette's residual magnetism, but...
What if I told you a failed, unaired TV pilot became a cult classic and racked up over 1.3 billion views on YouTube? Sounds insane, right? But that's exactly what happened with Heat Vision and Jack. And trust me, this story only gets weirder. In 1999, the internet was slow, people were still renting movies from Blockbuster, and Jack Black was just starting to blow up. Out of nowhere, a wild, hilarious, totally bizarre TV pilot was made, and this thing was hilarious in the best way. So join us as we take a look back into the buried TV pilot Heat Vision and Jack, to find out how it was made, why it didn't get picked up, and what made it so special that fans are still talking about it over 20 years later. During production and after, everything was going great, the excitement was palpable. Then suddenly one day, Fox stepped in and said, "Nope." The network ultimately decided not to pick up the pilot for a full series, and even chose not to broadcast the pilot. They killed it before they ever aired it. It was just gone, like it never happened. But here's the thing. The pilot was released online, and people went crazy for it. They started watching it, talking about it, and in fact, loving it.
We were just staring at Ben, who was sitting on the couch next to us.
Yeah, because he's a movie star. He's a movie star, and he's talking about doing television. He's considering doing television, and they go, ooh.
Eventually, Heat Vision and Jack gained more than just a cult following. It's now considered a classic. It was weird, it was funny, and honestly, it might have been one of the coolest shows that never got a real shot. Now let's take a look into what was right with Heat Vision and Jack. Back in the late 90s, before Dan Harmon was making Rick and Morty, and Jack Black was a household name, the two comedy nerds teamed up and created one of the most unexpected TV pilots ever. And that's how Heat Vision and Jack was born. At the time, Jack Black was already known for being loud, goofy, and full of energy. So this role fit him perfectly. He played Jack Austin, a former astronaut who was on the run from NASA after gaining superintelligence. But here's the twist. He was only smart when the sun was up. As soon as the sun went down, his intelligence basically vanished. So yeah, you could say he was a solar-powered brainiac. And then there was Jack's old roommate, who somehow had been turned into a motorcycle with the name Heat Vision. So now they rode around together, solving mysteries and dodging government agents. The craziest part? Heat Vision was voiced by Owen Wilson, sounding exactly like that chill, laid-back friend we all know. The one who's always like, "Whoa, dude, chill?"
What the happened here? Jack, is that blood?
Blood of tomatoes.
Hey, if you're enjoying this content, please hit the like and subscribe button so we can continue to bring you more content like this. Now here's the part that really made the pilot stand out. Ron Silver. The actor played himself, but as an evil villain. He was an alien agent working for NASA, hunting Jack down. And just like that, the story took off, with zero backstory and all kinds of wild energy. When the pilot was made, everyone involved seemed to know it was something special. I mean, Ben Stiller directed it like a dramatic sci-fi thriller, with tons of jokes. It wasn't just a comedy, it was a parody of action shows, a spoof of Knight Rider, and a love letter to all the cheesy sci-fi of the 80s. But the pilot started with a short introduction featuring Ben Stiller, whose entrance was a little odd, with a slightly smug monologue as he introduced Heat Vision and Jack. At first glance, it seemed random. Like, why is Ben Stiller opening for Jack Black and Owen Wilson? But back in the 90s, Ben Stiller was the biggest name attached to the project. He had a short-lived but critically acclaimed sketch series called The Ben Stiller Show, which, surprisingly, was canceled before it ever found a mainstream audience. The intro to Heat Vision and Jack was filled with inside jokes that poked fun at Stiller's own failed ventures. It was self-deprecating but also strategic. The team was shopping the pilot around, and having Stiller open the show was like saying, "Hey networks, look, we've got a known name. Take us seriously." But that was just one part of the genius. This pilot was made for a TV audience raised on 70s and 80s television. It was packed with homages and parodies of classic sci-fi. detective shows, and over-the-top action dramas. If you ever watched Nick at Night or Late Night Cable, Heat Vision and Jack felt like a fever dream of familiar tropes turned up to 11. Beside this strategic launch, the show leaned hard into absurdist territory, with characters like a man who gets smarter when the sun is out, a talking motorcycle voiced by Owen Wilson, Ron Silver playing himself as a government villain. That was either pure madness or pure brilliance, or you can say both. Dan Harmon, who co-created the show with Rob Schrab, later went on to create Community and Rick and Morty, two shows that helped bring meta-humor into the mainstream. But Heat Vision and Jack was one of his earliest experiments in that style. So, with all that talent, all that creativity, and a unique concept, the show should have been a hit. So what went wrong with Heat Vision and Jack? Fox didn't pick up the pilot in 1999 primarily because the network felt it was too unconventional for mainstream audiences at the time. Despite having big names like Ben Stiller as the director, Jack Black as the lead, and Owen Wilson voicing the talking motorcycle, the show's quirky, over-the-top tone made it a hard sell. It blended sci-fi, action, and absurd comedy in a way that was ahead of its time, and Fox likely doubted it would attract a broad enough audience to justify the cost. While Fox, like most other networks, often play it safe in the face of a risky television show, they proclaimed that mainstream audiences just weren't ready for this kind of self-aware storytelling. It took the rise of the internet, meme culture, and 2000-era screen comedy to make this kind of humor finally click. Today, fans are still hooked on this wild premise. But what really sticks with people is how seriously the show commits to being ridiculous. Like, without any apologies. The most talked-about moment of the show? The scene where the villain, Paragon, apparently a cosmic entity made of pure evil, possesses a fry cook using a radio taped to a spatula. And it doesn't stop there. Jack then traps that same villain inside a cassette tape using a boombox. You read that right. A demon on a Maxell tape.
Be very careful with this. Paragon's glide-sustaining ions have been neutralized by the cassette's residual magnetism, but his
And the show treats it like it's totally normal. Like, yep, this is just how science works. It's the perfect blend of 80s action logic and late 90s sarcasm that later became instant meme material. But here's the genius part. Underneath all the absurdity, there's actually some smart satire. The whole episode is a love letter to old sci-fi, and action shows that never bothered to explain anything. Shows where tech just worked, if the hero yelled loud enough or hit the right blinking button. Fans eat this up because it captures something most shows miss. It's not just a parody, it's a sincere parody. The creators clearly loved the genre, even as they poked fun at it. And that's what gives Heat Vision and Jack its charm. It never mocks the style, it celebrates it, just with a straight face and a ton of caffeine. And how could we forget that tone? That weird mix of dumb and brilliant is what people remember most. It's why fans still quote lines like, "I know everything because the sun is out," or geek out over Ron Silver playing himself as a power-hungry government agent.
Yes, sir. You can't run forever, Jack.
To this day, people say the pilot feels like it came from another timeline, one where weird, smart, genre-bending comedies didn't just survive, they dominated the screen. And honestly, if it had premiered even 5 years later, during the age of Adult Swim, streaming, or peak post-Arrested Development TV, it might have been a cult hit from the start. And while fans still rave about those over-the-top moments and genius plot twists, what really sticks with people isn't just what the show did, it's what it meant. Because when you step back and look at the big picture, Heat Vision and Jack wasn't just ahead of its time. It was a warning shot for what was coming next. On paper, it's just a failed pilot from 1999, a half-hour of sci-fi silliness that never got picked up. But in reality, it's way more than that. This pilot was lightning in a bottle, a bunch of wildly talented people experimenting with comedy, genre, and storytelling before the world was ready for it. Even though the networks passed, Heat Vision and Jack planted a flag. It dared to be absurd. It made fun of sci-fi tropes while still loving them. It took inspiration from shows like Knight Rider, The Incredible Hulk, and the $6 Million Man and made the concept as unique as possible. And for a single unaired pilot episode, that's kind of incredible. What makes it so powerful is what it represents. The early comedy shows like Arrested Development, 30 Rock, Community, and Rick and Morty owe a little debt to Heat Vision and Jack, because this pilot proved you could be smart, silly, self-aware, and still tell a great story. This pilot carved a notch for itself in television history. So no, Heat Vision and Jack didn't change TV in 1999, but it predicted the kind of shows that would. It's a cult classic for a reason, a glimpse of what comedy could be when it's fearless, messy, and just plain weird. So what do you think about this pilot? Does it deserve a chance, or should we just leave it buried under a pile of old pilots that could never fly? Let us know in the comments section below.